Daniel was only 8 when he first wandered into the strange forest behind his village. The villagers often warned children not to go there, saying the woods were alive with secrets that no human should disturb. But Daniel's curiosity was stronger than fear. That day, the sunlight filtered through the tall, silver-leaved trees, making patterns on the soft moss under his feet. Birds he had never seen before sang strange, melodic tunes, and the air smelled sweet, almost like honey mixed with rain. He walked further than he had ever gone before, his small heart beating with both excitement and unease. Suddenly, a soft, musical laugh echoed through the trees. Daniel froze. He had not heard any human voice in hours, only the whispers of the forest. Then, stepping lightly over the roots, came a girl. She was unlike any child Daniel had ever met. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim light, soft and shimmering like the surface of a calm river under the moon. Her eyes were vast and bright, like distant stars, reflecting the sunlight in strange colors. Her hair floated around her, almost as if it had a life of its own. She looked at him curiously, tilting her head as if she were trying to understand a language she did not know. Daniel's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to speak. "I'm Daniel," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I am Lyra," she replied. Her voice was soft, musical, almost like the sound of wind chimes. "Why have you come here, human?" I like exploring," Daniel said, shrugging. "I wanted to see what's in the forest. People say it's dangerous, but I didn't believe them." He smiled nervously. Lyra laughed again, a sound so light and joyful that Daniel felt his chest swell with happiness. "You are brave," she said. "Or maybe you are foolish." She stepped closer, and Daniel could see how small and delicate she was, yet there was a strange power in her presence. It was as if the forest itself respected her. They spent the afternoon together, talking in their own ways. Daniel told her about his village, about simple things like his favorite tree by the river and the cat he had named Whiskers. Lyra shared stories too, though Daniel could barely understand them. She spoke of places he had never imagined, cities made of crystal, rivers that sang, and skis that changed color every hour. Yet, despite the strangeness, Daniel felt a bond forming. It was a connection deeper than words, something felt in the heart rather than understood by the mind. As the sun began to sink behind the trees, painting the forest in gold and orange, Daniel knew he had to return home. He felt a strange sadness at leaving Lyra, though they had just met. Seeing his hesitation, Lyra stepped closer and took his small hand in hers. Her touch was warm and comforting, almost magical. "Promise me something," she said, her eyes searching his. "Promise me that when we meet again, you will remember me, and that one day, when the time is right, you will be mine." Daniel's eyes widened. He did not fully understand what she meant, but her words felt heavy with meaning. He looked at her glowing face and the intensity in her star-like eyes and nodded without thinking. "I promise," he whispered. "I will marry you." Lyra's smile was radiant, full of warmth and something he could not name. She leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss on his forehead, a gesture that filled Daniel's chest with a strange, overwhelming emotion. "Then it is settled," she said. "I will return for you no matter how far away I am." Before Daniel could respond, a soft light enveloped her. It pulsed and shimmered, filling the space around him with warmth and wonder. And then she was gone, vanished into a glow that left nothing behind but the soft echo of her laughter. Daniel stood in the forest alone, holding the memory of her touch, her words, and her promise. He walked home slowly, the promise heavy in his heart. A child's game, or something more, he could not tell, but he knew one thing for certain: he would never forget her. The strange girl from the forest, with the starry eyes and glowing skin, had left a mark on his life that nothing could erase. And somewhere in the vastness of the world, she had promised to come back. Years passed, and Daniel grew taller, stronger, and wiser, yet the memory of Lyra never left him. Every night he would lie beneath the familiar night sky, tracing constellations with his fingers, imagining her among the stars. He often wondered if she remembered him, if she even thought of him. The villagers called him foolish when he spoke of a glowing girl from the forest. "She's not real," they said. "You were just a child dreaming." But Daniel did not care. He remembered the promise, and promises in his heart were stronger than fear or doubt. Life went on. He learned to work the fields, to mend fences, and to navigate the small rivers near his home. Yet even in the mundane rhythm of daily life, Lyra's memory shimmered. Sometimes, when the wind rustled the leaves just so, he could almost hear her laughter. Sometimes, when the sun touched the river in a certain way, he could imagine her standing beside him, glowing softly, smiling at him with those star-like eyes. Those moments reminded him that the world was larger than his village, larger than he could even imagine. Then one evening, when the sky was painted with deep purples and golds, a strange sight appeared at the edge of the village. A vessel descended from the heavens, glowing silver and blue, moving with a grace no human technology could match. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, reflecting the clouds and trees in impossible patterns. The villagers screamed and ran, their fear filling the air like smoke. But Daniel stood frozen, heart pounding in a rhythm he had not known for years. From the vessel, a figure descended. Tall, regal, and impossible in beauty, she floated down with the grace of a queen. Her skin glimmered, her hair flowed as if caught in a soft current of wind that existed only around her, and her eyes, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Those same starry eyes stared into his, and for a moment the years vanished. It was Lyra, the same girl from the forest. But now she radiated power, authority, and a presence that could not be ignored. She was no longer a child, no longer playful. She was a queen. Daniel ran to her, his feet pounding the earth, his heart leaping with hope and fear. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice trembling. She looked at him, and the corner of her lips lifted in a soft, familiar smile. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying the music of 1,000 memories. "I have returned." The villagers gaped in shock and awe, unsure whether to fear or worship her. Daniel noticed the subtle aura of command around her, the way her gaze seemed to hold invisible armies. She had not come alone. Distant shadows in the sky hinted at ships, guardians, or perhaps armies following her will. The realization struck him. Lyra was no ordinary being. She had come from a world far beyond theirs, a world he could barely comprehend. Yet in her eyes there was recognition, warmth, and the promise that had survived all these years. She stepped closer, and the air around them seemed to hum with a strange, gentle energy. Daniel felt as if the boy he had been, the one who had promised to marry her, was standing right beside the man he had become. The distance of time and space melted away. Lyra knelt slightly, placing her glowing hand on his cheek. "I promised you," she said softly, "and I always keep my promises, no matter how far I travel, no matter how long it takes." Daniel's chest tightened with emotion. He had dreamed of this moment for years, yet seeing her now, he realized dreams could never capture the intensity of reality. She had returned not as a child, but as a queen, and he was still here waiting, just as he had promised he would. But as he looked at the skies filled with alien ships, Daniel understood something else too. Her return would not be simple. Love had arrived, yes, but it came with challenges that might shake the world he had known. The promise had been kept, but the real test was only beginning. The village had never seen anything like her. Lyra moved through the streets with a grace that made even the bravest villagers step back in awe. Her glowing skin cast soft light across their homes, and her hair shimmered as if dusted with starlight. Children peeked from behind fences, whispering to each other, too afraid yet too curious to run away. The elders shook their heads, unsure whether to call her a goddess, a queen, or a threat. Daniel, however, saw only the girl who had promised him a lifetime ago, and he could feel the bond between them pull stronger with every heartbeat. When she stopped in the center of the village, she looked around with calm authority. Her eyes, the same deep, shining stars he remembered, swept over the people, reading their fear and hesitation. Then they rested on him. "I am here for the promise," she said softly, yet her voice carried through the square, gentle and commanding at once. Daniel felt warmth spread through him, but he also felt a pang of worry. Lyra had returned, yes, but the shadows above, the ships that hovered silently in the sky, reminded him that her power was beyond comprehension. The villagers murmured among themselves, their fear growing. "She will take the land," someone whispered. "She is not of this world." Daniel clenched his fists. He knew she would not harm them, yet he also understood why they were afraid. Humans had never faced beings like Lyra before, creatures who could travel across galaxies, who spoke languages of light and sound, who could bend the world with their presence. And now, that very being stood in the heart of their village, and she had chosen him. Lyra knelt before Daniel, a gesture of acknowledgement, not submission. "Daniel," she said, placing her glowing hand lightly on his shoulder, "I have returned because I made a promise long ago. I did not come to rule nor to claim. I came to honor a bond formed between us." Daniel's throat tightened. The words he had waited years to hear filled him with both joy and fear. Joy because she was here, fear because the world might not understand the meaning of her presence. A sudden rumble above them reminded him of the alien ships that circled silently, hovering like massive silver moons. Some villagers screamed and others froze. Lyra's eyes flicked to the sky, and a wave of calm seemed to ripple over the crowd. Daniel realized that even the ships obeyed her silently, almost reverently. He looked at her in awe. The girl who had vanished into light so many years ago had returned not just as the companion of his childhood dreams, but as a being of unimaginable power. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. "Lyra, what are we going to do? The people, they're afraid of you. They might even attack." She looked at him with quiet understanding. "Love, Daniel," she said softly, "is stronger than fear, but fear must be faced and hearts must be shown the truth." Together they walked through the village. She spoke to the elders not in commands but in gentle truths. She shared stories of distant worlds, of civilizations built on cooperation rather than conquest, of wonders humans could barely imagine. Slowly the fear began to ebb. The villagers' eyes widened with wonder rather than terror. They could not fully understand her, but they felt her kindness, her warmth, and the sincerity of her promise. Daniel felt pride swell in his chest. He realized that the promise they had made as children was not just about two hearts. It was a bridge between two worlds. She had returned to honor him, yes, but in doing so, she had also shown the village that humanity's courage, kindness, and heart could be recognized across the stars. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in twilight, Lyra stood beside Daniel, her hand resting lightly on his. The alien fleet above them shimmered like distant stars, silent yet protective. For the first time in years, Daniel felt hope, not just for himself, but for a future where the human heart could meet the stars and be understood. The journey was only beginning, and he knew that trials lay ahead. But for now, in that glowing evening, the girl who had promised returned, and she had kept her word. Days passed after Lyra's arrival, yet the village remained tense. Whispers traveled faster than the wind, and fear hung in every doorway. Some villagers claimed she was a threat, a being from the stars who could crush them in an instant. Others watched silently, unsure whether to believe the stories of Daniel's childhood or the awe-inspiring reality of the glowing queen standing beside him. Daniel felt the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. He had imagined her return for years as a dream, a promise fulfilled, but the reality was far more complicated. One morning, as the sun rose in soft pinks and golds, Daniel found Lyra standing at the edge of the village, gazing at the horizon. Her face, though regal, held a hint of worry. "Daniel," she said softly, "there are those in my world who will not understand my choice. They see me choosing a human as weakness, and they will come to challenge it." Daniel's chest tightened. He had known her return would not be simple, but he had never imagined that her very people could threaten them. I don't know if the village can handle it," he admitted, his voice low. "They already fear you. If your people attack, it could destroy everything here." Lyra turned to him, eyes glowing faintly with the light of distant galaxies. "Then we will show them why love and loyalty are stronger than fear and power," she said firmly. Her presence radiated confidence, yet Daniel sensed the strain beneath her words. Even queens, it seemed, had doubts. That evening, strange ships appeared in the sky, larger and more ominous than before. Their surfaces shimmered with alien metals, reflecting the fading light in sharp, blinding patterns. Daniel's heart pounded as he realized they were coming for Lyra, not to harm Earth, but to demand her return, to punish what they saw as defiance. Villagers screamed and scattered, but Daniel stood frozen, torn between protecting them and standing beside the woman he had promised to marry. Lyra reached for his hand. "Daniel, I need you here, not as a soldier, not as a guard, but as my heart. I must prove that Earth and its people matter to me, that humanity has value even to the stars." Daniel swallowed hard, his fear mingling with determination. He had spent years waiting for her, dreaming of this moment. Now he understood that the promise they had made as children would be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. Together they faced the incoming fleet. Lyra's voice rang out, clear and commanding, yet calm. The alien ships paused, sensing her presence. She spoke in a language of light and sound, a language humans could not understand, and the ships hesitated as if her words carried the weight of centuries. Daniel watched, awestruck, as she negotiated silently, her gestures precise and elegant. He realized that she fought not with weapons, but with understanding, reason, and respect, a power far greater than brute force. Daniel felt his own courage rise. He spoke to the villagers, guiding them to stay calm, to trust Lyra. "She has never come to harm us," he shouted. "She came because she promised. She will protect us if we do not give fear the power to control us." Slowly, the villagers began to listen, their fear easing as they saw the bond between the human man and the alien queen. By nightfall, the alien fleet had retreated, not defeated by force, but by the strength of connection, trust, and conviction. Daniel stood beside Lyra, his hand in hers, and for the first time he understood what she had meant when she spoke of love as power. The challenge was not only to survive, it was to prove that humanity's heart could matter even in the vastness of space. Lyra smiled at him, a mixture of pride and affection. "You have more courage than many I have met across the stars," she said, "and together we will face what comes next." Daniel nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known. The promise they had made as children was no longer just a dream. It was a living bond, tested and strengthened by trials. And now nothing could break it. After the alien fleet retreated, a quiet calm settled over the village, though the tension lingered in the air. The villagers no longer feared Lyra entirely, but their curiosity mixed with caution. Daniel could see it in their eyes, the question that hovered silently above every head. Why would a being so powerful care about us? Lyra sensed it too. One morning, she led Daniel and a small group of villagers to a hill just outside the village. From there, her vessel glowed in the sunlight, its smooth silver surface reflecting the sky like liquid metal. She raised her hand, and the doors of the ship opened, revealing a world unlike anything they had imagined. Streams of light moved in patterns that felt alive, and the air inside hummed softly, resonating with an energy that made their hearts thrum. "This is my home," Lyra said, her voice steady and warm. "A place built not on fear or conquest, but on understanding and creation. I want you to see that humanity can belong in this universe, that your hearts, courage, and kindness have meaning even among the stars." The villagers hesitated, unsure if they dared step inside. Daniel, however, felt pride swelling in his chest. "Go," he urged them. "See for yourself, she is not here to hurt us. She came because she promised." Slowly, curiosity overcame fear, and the villagers walked forward, their eyes wide with wonder. Inside, they discovered cities of crystal, forests of glowing trees, and rivers that sang in harmony. Lyra guided them with gentle words and gestures, showing how her people lived, learned, and loved. Daniel watched as the villagers' fear turned into awe, as children laughed at the floating gardens and elders marveled at technology that seemed like magic. Yet Lyra's focus never left him. She leaned close and whispered, "See, Daniel, even in my world the human heart shines brighter than many I have known. You and your people are extraordinary." Daniel felt a warmth he had never known. He realized that humanity's strength was not in weapons, armies, or machines, but in hope, in loyalty, in compassion, the very qualities that Lyra valued. He took her hand, feeling the glow of her touch, and whispered, "I always believed that. I just didn't know the stars could see it too." As the days passed, Lyra continued to bridge the two worlds. Villagers who once trembled at her presence now walked beside her, learning and laughing, discovering that they could be part of something greater without losing themselves. Daniel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Years of waiting, years of longing, had led to this moment. The promise they had made as children had not only brought them together, but had also brought a new understanding between humans and a civilization far beyond Earth. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the village, Lyra took Daniel to a quiet spot atop a hill. The alien stars twinkled above, and the village glowed softly beneath them. "You see, Daniel," she said, "love and courage have power beyond what most beings imagine. They can change minds, hearts, and even worlds. You have reminded me why promises are sacred, why I returned." Daniel looked into her starry eyes, feeling the weight of every moment they had shared, the forest, the promise, the years of waiting, the fear, and now the wonder. "I never stopped believing," he said softly, "even when everyone else did." Lyra smiled, a light that seemed to shine brighter than the moons above. "And that is why humanity is remarkable, not because of strength or numbers, but because of heart. You have proven that the human spirit can matter, even across galaxies. And because of that, I chose to return to you to keep my promise and to honor your world." For the first time since her arrival, the villagers truly understood. They saw not an alien queen, but a being who valued the heart above all else, who recognized humanity's worth. Daniel felt a swelling pride, knowing that love, faith, and courage had bridged the impossible divide between two worlds. As night fell, he stood beside Lyra, hand in hand, the stars above shining like 1,000 witnesses to their bond. In that moment, Daniel realized that the promise from his childhood was no longer a memory. It was alive, powerful, and transforming the world around them. Humanity had been seen, appreciated, and honored, and it had been love that made it possible. The peace that had settled over the village was fragile. Far above the skies, in the distant reaches of Lyra's home galaxy, voices of dissent began to rise. Lords and generals of her people, jealous of her choice to return to a human, whispered threats. They saw humanity as weak, unworthy, and unimportant, and they demanded that she abandon Earth and reclaim her loyalty to the stars. Lyra had expected this challenge, but the thought of putting Daniel and the village at risk filled her with unease. One evening, while Daniel and Lyra walked along the riverbank, the sky darkened unnaturally. Massive alien ships appeared in formation above the village, casting long shadows over the fields. The ground trembled with their arrival, and fear gripped the hearts of the villagers. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand tightly. "They're coming for us," he said, his voice trembling but determined. Lyra squeezed his hand in return. "Yes," she said softly, "but together we will face them. Fear is the weapon they wield, and courage is ours." The alien fleet descended slowly, but their intent was clear. They had come to challenge her authority, and by extension, humanity's right to exist in her eyes. Daniel realized this trial was not just about power or politics. It was a test of trust, loyalty, and the strength of the human heart itself. Lyra stood in the village square, glowing brighter than ever, her presence commanding yet calm. She spoke in the language of light and sound, and the ships paused, listening. Daniel stepped forward beside her, and though he was only human, he felt a surge of courage he had never known before. He called out to the villagers, "Stay calm, she has kept her promise. We can face this together." Then the trial began. The alien leaders sent emissaries down, beings taller and stronger than any human, with voices that carried like thunder. They demanded obedience, questioning Lyra's choices and mocking humanity. Lyra responded not with anger, but with reason, showing them the value of compassion, loyalty, and trust. Daniel joined her, speaking of the courage, kindness, and heart he had witnessed in the villagers. His words were simple, yet they carried truth. The alien emissaries were not used to such defiance grounded in honesty and love. They argued, threatened, and tried to intimidate, but Lyra and Daniel stood firm. Slowly, some of the emissaries hesitated, realizing that the human spirit could not be crushed by fear alone. It was a power alien to them, a power of faith and heart. As the night stretched on, a subtle change occurred. The fleet above, once ominous, began to waver. Ships turned, some retreating, others pausing in silent contemplation. Daniel watched in awe as Lyra's words, combined with his own, seemed to reach into the hearts of the invaders. Humanity's courage, their willingness to stand for one another, was something even the stars respected. Finally, the alien forces. They left not because of weapons, but because they had witnessed something extraordinary, a human and an alien bound by promise and love, standing together unafraid. Lyra turned to Daniel, her eyes softening. "You have done more than you know," she said. "You have shown them that love and loyalty are stronger than fear and power. This is what humanity is, Daniel. This is what makes your kind remarkable." Daniel felt his chest swell with pride and relief. Years of waiting, dreaming, and believing had led to this moment. The promise he and Lyra had made as children had not only survived time, it had changed the course of events in ways he could never have imagined. He held her hand tightly and whispered, "I always believed in us. I always believed in them, too." Lyra smiled, the glow of her being mingling with the starlight above. Together they had faced the trial, not just of alien politics or power, but of the heart itself. Humanity had been tested, and it had risen to the challenge, proving that the bond between two souls, when strengthened by courage and love, could inspire even the stars to pause in respect. The stars had never shone brighter above the village than on the night of their final triumph. The alien fleet had retreated, leaving the sky quiet, and the villagers gathered in the square, unsure how to express the mixture of awe, relief, and wonder they felt. Daniel stood beside Lyra, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, her glow reflecting softly on their faces. After years of waiting, longing, and fear, the promise had been kept. She was here not as a distant dream, not as a stranger, but as a queen who had returned to honor a childhood vow. Lyra's eyes scanned the village, filled with a tender pride. "You have shown me what I already knew," she said, her voice gentle yet strong. "The courage of your hearts, the strength of your loyalty, and the love you carry it is what makes humanity remarkable. Not one empire, not one army could have proven this. Only you, Daniel, and your people could." Daniel's throat tightened and he swallowed hard. "I always believed in you," he said, voice trembling. "I never stopped hoping you would return, and I never doubted that you would keep your word." He remembered the small boy in the forest, holding hands with a glowing stranger, making a promise he barely understood at the time. Now, standing as a man, he realized that promise had guided his life, shaping every choice, every heartbeat until this moment. The villagers began to step forward, no longer afraid but inspired. They approached Lyra slowly, offering smiles, nods, and gestures of welcome. She reached out to them, touching hands, bowing slightly, and speaking words of peace and encouragement. Daniel realized that in honoring his promise, she had not only fulfilled a personal vow but had brought two worlds closer together. Humanity had been recognized by the stars, not for conquest or power, but for heart, for courage, for love. Lyra turned back to Daniel, a soft, radiant smile on her face. "A promise made in childhood," she whispered, "can grow stronger than any empire, more powerful than any fleet. I have returned to honor you, Daniel, and together we will create a future that neither of our worlds has ever known." He felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, a mixture of joy, relief, and awe. "And I will honor you too," he said, his voice firm despite the emotion. "Not because I have to, but because my heart has never stopped choosing you." Lyra's glow brightened for a moment, as if the stars themselves had leaned closer to witness the scene. That night, under the twin moons and the endless sky, the villagers celebrated, not just for survival, but for the miracle they had witnessed. Daniel and Lyra walked together along the river, recalling their first meeting in the forest. The light of the stars reflected on the water, mingling with her glow, creating a river of shining memories. "I was a child when I promised you," Daniel said softly, "and I never imagined it could lead to this." Lyra took his hands in hers. "Neither did I," she admitted, her voice carrying the warmth of 1,000 worlds. "But promises are not about understanding the future, they are about trusting the heart, and I have always trusted yours." For the first time in their lives, Daniel and Lyra felt a complete sense of peace. The village, the stars, and the universe beyond all seemed to bend toward harmony. A promise had been made, tested, and fulfilled. Love had bridged worlds, courage had inspired the universe, and humanity had proven its worth, not through war, but through heart. As they stood hand in hand, watching the first light of dawn touch the village, Daniel realized that childhood dreams could indeed shape reality. And Lyra, the alien girl who had once vanished into the forest light, was now his partner, his queen, and the proof that the human heart could echo across the stars. The promise had been kept. The heart of humanity had been honored. And together, Daniel and Lyra stepped into a future where love, courage, and faith bridged worlds, showing the universe that even the smallest human heart could shine brighter than the stars.